Welcome to Journaling with Nature, the podcast for those who want to turn curiosity into wonder, a pencil sketch into a rabbit hole of discovery, a moment of stillness into a life full of joy. I'm your host, Bethan Burton. Let's open the pages of our nature journals and explore this world together. Hello, this is episode 7. Today I'm speaking with Liz Clayton Fuller, a scientific illustrator and nature journal teacher from Nashville, Tennessee. Before this interview, I knew Liz only through our online interactions on social media. But through this conversation, we have found in each other a kindred spirit, and this has truly turned into a beautiful friendship. Listen for the moment we realized our teenage selves would have been best friends had we been at the same high school at the same time. Liz, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I know you already, but I'm excited to talk to you.
Absolutely, I feel the same way. So I want to start at the beginning of your story, and I think often that people who love nature as adults have nature in their childhoods, and they maybe had some formative experiences with nature as children. Was that true for you? Did you have nature in your childhood?
You know, I did, but maybe not in the way that you might think. I kind of came to nature through art instead of coming to art through nature. So,
Okay.
you know, I'm the first bird watcher in my family. I'm the first artist in my family. You know, I'm kind of the random thing that happened and everyone was like, wait, what? How did we, how is this child possible? But I have been drawing ever since I can remember.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, when I was growing up, I was always drawing something or painting something, and I am so lucky to have had a super supportive family. My mom and my dad were always just giving me art supplies and letting me create and grow. So from a really young age, I was always just drawing. I loved to draw animals too when I was younger. So that was sort of my start as I was a kid.
That's great.
And along with that, you know, we played outside a ton and I always loved being outside. But, you know, when I was younger, I didn't have that connection to nature, and I kind of built that through my artwork later in my life.
It's interesting because a lot of kids have this freedom in art and drawing as youngsters, and then they get to a certain point, maybe 7 or 8, and then the fear kicks in and they give it up. So you just didn't have that point where the fear kicked in, which is so beautiful.
Yeah, I didn't. And I think maybe, you know, now as like a grown woman, the fear is more present,
Okay.
of course. But
Yeah.
You know, I think that every artist is always hypercritical of their own work. But
yes.
I just I built confidence in art early, and I'm super thankful to have that now.
That's so good. And so at what point, how did that happen that you connected art and circled back to nature?
Right. So when I was in high school, I think a lot of artists will relate to this. I was kind of the only artist in my grade, or like the best artist in my grade. There was this one other guy who was incredible, but we were like the artists.
Yeah.
So in high school, I became a vegetarian and started doing a lot of artwork about animal rights and sort of my experience learning about all those things. So that was kind of a beginning to painting animals. That was like me dipping my toe in and learning a little bit. And then in college, I majored in illustration, and I was taking all these classes that were sort of pushing me to do the super whimsical, creative, artsy work. And I never felt like it was clicking for me. And I always felt like I was just struggling through these paintings and drawings, and that I never loved them. And then I took a scientific illustration course, and I was like, this is my sweet spot. Like, I didn't even know that there was a career where you could just draw nature accurately, and that's all that you had to do. And I was so excited.
Oh, that's amazing. Your story is interesting to me because I was a vegetarian activist artist as a teenager as well, and I
awesome.
My final piece in my final year of high school was an anti-McDonald's piece with a baby wrapped in money, and Ronald McDonald and the sad cow and all that stuff.
Yes. Oh my gosh, we would have been best friends in high school. I had so many similar pieces. Oh my gosh, that is incredible. Yeah, we would have been thick as thieves.
So you found scientific illustration that is so good, and then you ended up as a scientific illustration intern at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology.
I did.
And as part of that, you had the chance to travel to the Galapagos Islands to instruct students in field sketching. I want to know absolutely everything about this trip. It sounds amazing.
Oh my gosh, it was life-changing, as you can imagine. And I can't even believe that I get to say this, but I got to make that trip 3 different times with 3 different groups of students. And it will forever be the greatest thing I've ever done. Like, I can't imagine that anything will ever top that. So I was able to teach a scientific illustration seminar to freshman biology students at Cornell. And they were coming through a program called the Biology Scholars Program, which pulls freshmen from underrepresented backgrounds in biology. So
Amazing.
Lower income families, there are a lot of women in the program, first time college students, all kinds of stuff. And they applied and they got in this group. So it was this small group. It's like 11 people every year. And I got to teach them from, a science background they were coming from. They're like, Liz, no, I can't draw. I'm like, I promise we're going to do this and you're going to love it. And so I got to teach them sort of the fundamentals of drawing and painting and sort of prepare them to do field sketching because, of course, at the time it was the frigid winter in Ithaca, so we were not going outside to sketch. So we got to practice on museum specimens and photos and videos and leave the frigid north and go to the Galapagos for a week. And it was incredible. The students were amazing. And obviously the wildlife is like nothing else in the world.
Tell me about what you saw there.
Oh my gosh. The heavy hitters that everyone thinks are blue-footed boobies, of course. And they were there and they were totally amazing. But actually, my favorite booby were the red-footed boobies. So there's blue-footed booby, Nazca boobies, and red-footed boobies all there. And the red-footed boobies are these beautiful, sleek birds, and they come in 2 different morphs, a white morph and this like beautiful, soft tan morph. And they do have these like punchy red feet. And we were there while they were building their nests together.
Oh, wow, that's so special.
Such a joy to watch. So the birds were amazing. The swallow-tailed gulls were also a joy. So we actually lived on a boat while we were there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we were living on a boat and kind of ferrying between the islands at night because, I had obviously never been, and I kind of envisioned the Galapagos as this tightly clustered archipelago, but things are a lot more spread out than I realized. So we were living on a boat and we would travel at night and wake up to a new island and all these new species. And at night, the swallow-tailed gulls would fly with the boat and sort of make these sweet noises because they're nocturnal hunters. So they were communicating with each other and fishing at night. It was amazing.
It must have been magical.
It really was.
And I read that you said that the birds aren't scared of people, so they're easier to draw.
Yes, it is the ideal nature journaling experience. They have, lived there so long, kind of undisturbed, except for just tourists. They've been really protected for many, many years. So they just kind of go about their business, and you really get to observe them as like a fly on the wall, and they're just totally comfortable. So we just got to sit down, under the equator sun and just watch and sketch and see their natural behaviors. And I had an experience sketching these swallow-tailed gulls. I kind of sent my students off to go do their sketches, and I was like, I'm gonna take some time for me. So I sat down in front of a nest, and one gull was on the nest and the other was there preening its mate, and I was drawing and sketching and writing in my sketchbook, and I was like, I wonder if they'll switch places, like do the male and the female incubate the leg, because they're not sexually dimorphic. I didn't know who was who. And of
Okay.
course I'm sitting there watching, and they get up and they switch. I was like,
Oh, wow, you
ah,
saw it.
I saw it.
Oh,
Yeah. And I just learned so much. And they've got these beautiful, just bright red rings around their eyes. I mean, they're just the most beautiful birds I think I've ever seen. So it was just like the best.
magic. So this trip, it really seemed like this is where you discovered nature journaling as we know it. Would that be true?
Yeah.
You were scientific illustration, and then this, now you're really out in the field doing field sketching and field notes. Is this where
Right.
you discovered nature journaling?
Yeah, I think it's where I really fell in love with it. So when I started scientific illustration, I was like, this is it. This is amazing. I just want to do all of these hyper detailed paintings back to
Yes.
back to back to back. And when I started nature journaling with my students and teaching them to do it, it was sort of creating a balance between my scientific illustration that I didn't know that I needed. So
Yes.
it was a huge relief and such a joy to be able to sketch and record my observations and my thoughts. And it didn't have to be so precise. It could be personal. And I was like, ooh, I needed this too. It was so
Yeah.
cool to be teaching my students that, and also kind of falling in love with it myself. So I'm really thankful to have sort of both sides of that coin now.
Yeah, that was actually something I wanted to talk to you about, because on top of your teaching and nature journaling, field sketching work, you're also a fine artist and a freelance scientific illustrator, and you've created pieces for bird ID guides and scientific papers, and this stuff is really rigorous. You have to get every detail right, you have to count the number of feathers and put them in exactly right, and it's really precise and rigorous work, and really opposite to what you do on the other side, which is to try and get people to loosen up and to be relaxed about drawing and to be free and capture things quickly. And I'm wondering about that. How do you go between two really opposite ends of your work, the precision and extreme detail of scientific illustration and the much more free and loose sketching side? What's it like having two parts of your work that really are totally opposite?
Right. I honestly think teaching nature journaling has really helped me to push myself in my own nature journaling. When I'm telling my students to loosen up and be gentle with yourself and be free, I'm also telling myself that.
Yes.
But yeah, I think the switch was a little harder at first. A lot of artists talk about being too precious. And I think that when I started nature journaling, I was a little precious. I kind of held on to the perfection and the layout and, tried to make things perfect and beautiful, but nature doesn't always cooperate, even in the Galapagos. Like sometimes the bird that you're drawing just leaves and you cannot finish it. So I think that it's just really pushed me to loosen up and appreciate that side. And lately I've been doing something that I'm really enjoying that I thought that I would not like, and it's 5-minute paintings. So I'm just doing these really loose, like slapping it in my sketchbook. I'm looking at Audubon's Birds of America or a Peterson Field Guide, and I'm just starting a timer, painting for 5 minutes, and then stopping. Sometimes I have to make sure they have an eyeball at the end of 5 minutes, but for the most part, I'm timing myself just to make sure I have that looseness, because it really is difficult doing scientific illustration. And even though I love it, and that really is how my brain works, I crave for that other side now. So it's really nice to be able to switch between. It's not hard anymore. It's kind of like, oh, I do this one thing that I love and I get to do this other thing that I love, and it helps me be better at each opposite thing. So
that's beautiful.
It's so nice.
That's so good. And so you did these trips with the Galapagos and teaching people, and then you used all that knowledge and you've collaborated with the Bird Academy at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology to create an online course called Nature Journaling and Field Sketching. And I've taken this course and I absolutely love it. And I especially love I love that, like you were saying before, it's about it's an entry point. It's helping people loosen up, be free, realize that nature is available anywhere and we can step outside and just begin. And it's the beginning. Your course is to help people be gentle with themselves, like you said, and just free up. And yeah, I just wanted to say congratulations on this amazing course.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's not even just about making nature available to people, right? It's also about showing that art is available to everyone too.
Good point.
Because there's this thing that people do, and I know people have done it to you because they do it to every artist who's ever lived, which is that they think that being able to draw and paint is a magical gift that you've just received somehow, and you were born and you were amazing at art. But that's not true, as we know. We, have been drawing and painting our whole lives, and we work hard and we practice. And I really do believe that art is just like any other skill. Maybe I was born with a predisposition to want to create, with a big imagination. But I think that anyone can start drawing and painting. You just have to give it a chance and get down a foundation and do some practice. And I just love being able to share that with people. I'm really thankful that I can teach, because it's that's a hard skill too. But I just love sort of opening up the world of art to folks who think that they can't draw.
Yeah, which is in fact most adults. When you get down to it, when you're teaching a class, a huge number of them will say, I don't want to do it, or I can't do it. And a big part of it is just breaking down that initial barrier, which you do so well in the course.
Thank you. I'm glad.
Was filming the course difficult?
Oh my gosh.
I saw something you mentioned online, and it was like, this is much harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yes, gosh, I didn't know what to expect because I had always done all my teaching in person, and that comes so naturally to me, like I feel like maybe this isn't the reason, but being from the American South, I'm just like, I just have friendliness like bursting out of me. So it's really fun and easy to just chat and connect with people. And then it was just like, I'm talking to no one.
Yes. So
staring
different.
at a camera. And luckily I had a team of really, really amazing women that I was working with. The director and the videographer and the producer, they were all these very cool, very supportive ladies. And I was so thankful to have them there. And it was incredibly difficult, but I kind of got into my groove after a little while. And it was, things you don't think about. Like we filmed for a week. And so I put the exact same outfit on every day, and it's just like, I didn't even think about that at first. And talking to the camera like it's your friend is hard. But I think I fell into it, and I ended up loving reading from a teleprompter when I had to do these long spiels. I was like, this is amazing. So yeah, it was really intense and super fun, and I'm really thankful that I had the opportunity to do it.
And the production is really professional. It comes across really professional.
The team was amazing. I mean, I can only take credit for sitting there and teaching. They made everything look amazing. They made me look cool. It was it was great, and a huge testament to them. And it was. And we had the elements when we filmed outside, there were just all of
wind
these,
and the bird noise.
Exactly. All of these unknowns. There was an area we were filming in that was near an airport. Actually, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology is near an airport. So we were looking at the flight schedule, and we were like, okay, go. And filming between when planes would take off.
I love that. It's so funny.
Yeah, it was intense and amazing. Yeah.
All the stuff that goes behind the scenes is so interesting, but also we just never think about it like that.
Yes.
Checking the flight schedule and stuff. That's so funny.
Exactly. Yeah, I just thought, oh yeah, or like a loud car would drive by and it would ruin an entire like you just don't.
perfect take.
Exactly. It's always the perfect take that gets ruined. But yeah, you just don't think about these things. And I learned a ton. That's for sure. I remember, I don't really get nervous when I teach, but the first
Yeah.
couple of times talking to the camera, I was so nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, my palms are sweating. Like for the
Yeah,
first
wow.
time in my life, I have like super sweaty palms. This is weird. But eventually I kind of fell into it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. So you do a lot of field sketching. I wonder what your favorite field sketching kit is. Do you have a special kit that you take with you, and what does it, if say when you go to the Galapagos or even just step outside, what do you use in the field?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I've kind of switched it up a little bit lately. So originally, I was using watercolor a ton, which I
Hmm.
still do love. And I always recommend the same kit that I use in the course is a koi watercolor kit. And I like to use that too because it kind of keeps me, again, away from being precious. Like I don't like
Yes.
to bring my fancy watercolors out into the field because it kind of, confuses my brain. I'm like, okay, are we field sketching or are we doing like a fancy painting? So
Yes.
I like to take the koi watercolors out. And I love my Pentel water brush, which is the brush that you can fill the body with water. And I just thought that was the best thing since sliced bread. Like I was
Yes.
so excited. And I actually used those paintbrushes on my fine art as well. Like I just love them so much that I had been using traditional brushes and I've essentially gone almost exclusively to my Pentel
Interesting.
water brushes, even in my studio work. So,
Do you know, I've heard that John Muir-Laws does all his inside work as well, even for book illustrations with the Pentel brush as well.
really? Oh man,
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that. And also Jane Kim, the artist who painted this extraordinary two-story mural at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, she painted this whole mural with the Pentel brush pens.
No way.
Yes, and she was the first person who told me about them. And I thought,
Wow.
if she uses them to this degree of beauty and success, like I have got to try these. And I've been totally hooked ever since. That was, gosh, maybe 5 years ago now.
Yeah, fantastic.
Um, so I love that for my brush, for my watercolor. I've been kind of leaning towards gouache lately, which
Okay.
has been super fun. Just to kind of mix it up a little bit, and I like the opacity and the punchiness that you can get. And I typically would use a Moleskin watercolor sketchbook, but I have been really obsessed with these Stillman and Burns is the brand, and they make these beautiful sketchbooks with toned paper.
Oh,
So I
yes.
have one that has three tones. It's like a cool gray, black paper, and cream colored paper, and I'm totally like enamored with that sketchbook right now. So all of my sketching is going straight into that book these days.
Ah, so cool. Yeah, I've seen some amazing nature journal pages on toned paper. There's something about it that really brings out, especially when you use gouache or white or highlights on it, it really comes out.
Yes, yeah, it really I'm just living for it. And then I have been even painting, with my studio work, painting the background a color first, and painting on top of that because I'm just kind of enjoying having these different backgrounds. When I started,
Yeah.
I was very much like, in this kind of, uh, not really on purpose, but just in a bit of a rut. Like, this is how I do my paintings. So it's just how I'm going to
Yes.
keep doing my paintings. But it's nice to have, some variety and to be able to experiment these days.
Yeah, that's so good. So you come from Nashville, Tennessee,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering what nature is like in Nashville. What do you see when you go outside?
Oh my gosh, that is such a wonderful question. I was born and raised here and I love Nashville so much. I have a feeder like straight outside of my studio window, and our common feeder birds right now are American goldfinches and chickadees and house finches and mourning doves. And on my front porch, I have hummingbird feeders, and
Oh,
we just
wow.
have the most active, amazing little group of hummingbirds. It's 2 males and 3 females, and they're always just zooming around, and I adore them. So those are like my birds. But
Yes.
Tennessee is really beautiful and lush. It's the summer here now, and the landscape is really, really hilly and lovely. So, in our neighborhood, we, like to take walks, and there's a big open field and a creek with all these beautiful like forest and trees and a big snag that we always see a hawk perching in. So yeah, Tennessee is just green, green, green right now. And I've got a big garden growing out front too. So that's literally the first thing I see when I walk outside.
That really sounds incredible. Do you know it's on my bucket list of life to see a hummingbird because we don't have them in Australia?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, come to my house. You're welcome.
Yes.
You're welcome in Nashville anytime. They're not here in the winter, so you'll have to come in the spring or the summer.
Do they migrate? Do they migrate somewhere?
They do. They migrate south across the Gulf of Mexico to South America.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're so incredible. So we have the ruby-throated hummingbird in the eastern United States, and that's our only hummingbird. However, in the Southwest and the farther west, there are about 8 different species that are regularly around. So yeah.
It blows my mind that something so tiny can make such a huge journey.
I thought that too, and then you see them in action and you're like, they can do anything. They're so tenacious and strong, and they're small but they're mighty. So it's an amazing feat, but like if anyone can do it, they can.
That's so good. So your work really has an ornithology focus. You do a lot of bird portraits. Did you come to birding through Cornell? Was it that link that made you start loving birds and birding?
It was so simple. So I think I've thought about it a lot because birds are my life now. And I'm like, how did this happen? How did we get here? And the first thing that I think of is that when I was in high school, I met Zach, who is my now husband. And he was a huge nature nerd, and I was kind of, the art nerd, and he did a duck count at this local wildlife reserve. And so I was like, okay, maybe ducks are cool. I don't know. So that was sort of my first introduction. I went and watched ducks with Zach into birds. And then in college, when I took that scientific illustration course, we were supposed to choose our own subject matter, and I wasn't really sure what to choose. So I went to the bookstore, and there was this incredible book all about birds of the world that was on sale. And I just grabbed it, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. I think I need this for my class. So I bought the book, and I went home, and I just started pouring through it. And I was so captivated by the diversity of birds. There's nothing like it. And I started just drawing random birds. I'd just turn to a page and be like, this is a beautiful bird. I'm going to draw this bird. And so again, I kind of came to nature through art. I started drawing these birds, and then I kind of started looking around outside and seeing the birds and learning my local birds. And after I graduated college, I moved back to Nashville for a little while, and I did a series of backyard bird paintings, and they were my favorite paintings I had done in years and years. It was like I was a new artist painting these birds because I had just fallen in love with my local birds. So it was really just like this book sparked my interest, and then I looked up and around, and there were all the birds just waiting.
They're there already. That's amazing. Isn't it amazing in life how just one simple thing, like finding this one particular book in a bookstore, just changes the trajectory of your whole life?
It really did. I mean, it just was incredible. I mean, I remember the first bird that I drew, it was a Cape May warbler, and I remember the name of it, and I don't even know where that bird lives. I've never seen it, but it was just this spark, and I started just loving birds.
So, speaking of birds, I read something about this online. I read that someone described how Robin Williams, the actor and comedian, bought a bird portrait from you.
That is true.
Can you tell that story? I just think it's amazing.
Gosh, I can. So this was after college when I had moved back to Nashville, and it was exactly these same bird paintings, my Nashville birds. And I had this little body of work and I was really excited about it. And there was a local bike shop called Halcyon Bike Shop. It's still around. It is very cool. They have like hot pink cinder block walls. And they were doing sort of a rotation of local artists every month. And so, Zach and I went in, and I was just chatting with them, telling them I was an artist, trying to be very like humble and shy about it, and they were like, yeah, you should come in, get on the books. So I hung this show. It was my very first, like solo art show ever. All my friends and family came. It was the most fun night. And then it hung for a month after that. And so the day that we went to take the paintings down, I remember this so vividly. I was kind of fiddling with this painting, trying to get off the wall. And Zach was like, Liz, that guy, you were not going to believe this. He looks just like Robin Williams. And I was kind of like, hush, I'm focusing, like I was trying not to like drop my framed painting. And he kept tapping me, and I finally turned around, and it was just him. And he walked over, and he was like, these paintings are so lovely. Are you the artist? And I was just like, uh-huh. I don't even know how I was able to get words out. And he actually wanted to buy a painting. He was like, I really like that one. Is it sold? And I was like, oh no, it is sold. Like, it was my godmother bought it, and I was like, oh no, it's not available. I'm so sorry. But at the art show, I had a painting of, I think it was a white-throated sparrow. It was a white-throated sparrow, and it was my favorite painting of the bunch. And it was like the one that nobody cared about and didn't sell. And it's just like it's so funny how attached I get to paintings and how other people view them. But I loved this sparrow. And he was like, well, do you have any other paintings? And I was like, I have this super special sparrow, but it's in my car. Will you come outside with me? And he was like, okay, and I was like, I promise I'm not being weird, So he came out to the car with me, and I showed it to him, and he was like, that's great, I'll take it. And he was so nice. I introduced myself. I was like, I'm Liz, by the way. He was just like, hi, Liz. Like, he knew that I knew who he was, so he did not say,
you didn't need to introduce.
Exactly. But
that is so cool. So you sold Robin Williams a painting.
I did.
From the back of your car.
From the back of my car, from my 93 Jeep Cherokee. The coolest car ever. But yeah, so it was just so serendipitous that it was, we were literally taking the artwork down.
At the moment you were taking it down.
It was amazing.
That is such a cool story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it was so validating too, just to have someone that, I looked up to so much and was a huge part of my childhood, just be like, I like this. Like, I like your art and I want to support it. I was just like, yes, this is amazing.
Something that's one of those stories that you can tell forever for the rest of your life.
It's crazy. It's so funny. My dad was like, well, did you get a picture? And I was like, no, I was playing it very cool. So it's like a professional interaction. Yeah, professional.
That was your moment to be the special one because he was buying from you.
Yeah. So yeah, that was incredible.
So I'm wondering about your work and the things that motivate you. You talk about how you want to help people connect with art and nature, and I'm wondering what you hope to bring others through your work. What's your biggest motivation?
I think that when people see my paintings, I hope that they're inspired to look a little closer at nature in their own backyard. When I paint my local birds and I highlight them and people see them who aren't necessarily bird watchers or very outdoorsy. I just hope that they appreciate the simple beauty that's around us all the time, because as someone who came to knowing and loving birds so late in my life, I hope that I can maybe bring that to others too, because, with nature journaling and with scientific illustration and with painting, you have to look so closely. And I've just come to appreciate the stunning beauty that is around us constantly, that if we
Yes.
just pause, you can notice. So I just hope that it maybe inspires people to go outside and look at their birds, or maybe just appreciate what we've got a little more.
Yeah, it's a simple thing, isn't it? But it's something that a lot of people just miss, that we live in this amazing world and there are so many things that you can appreciate and it can enrich you in amazing ways, and yet making that leap to connect with nature is difficult for some people. So it's beautiful that your work can do that.
I hope so.
So at the end of your course, you have a little wrap up, and in it you say the practice of nature journaling is just like a garden. If you nurture it, it will grow and blossom. And I thought this was so beautiful. And I wonder if you could talk a bit about how you go about building a nature journaling habit in your own life. You've talked about you've got your rigorous scientific work and you've got your nature journaling work. I wonder if you have a practice that's just for you about connecting with nature right outside your door.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's, I preach to build it into your life in this way that, in the beginning, you kind of have to be a little structured about it, right? To make sure that you're going to come back to that habit and keep growing that garden. And
Yes.
now that I am really comfortable doing that, it just kind of hits me when I want to go outside and sketch, or look through, my nature books and do some paintings from those. Because even though that's not necessarily being outside in nature, it is also part of nature journaling for me to just be
For
like
sure.
learning about the outdoors and about wildlife through my art in my journal. So it just, it's like a need that comes up, and it's
Yes.
not always, on time or regular, but it is just something that crops up all the time. Like last night, after dinner, I was like, I've got to do some sketching, in this time where I would usually just take it easy and maybe read with my dog or do something relaxing. Sometimes there's just this voice that's like, let's draw. And I'm like, yes, okay. So I just try to listen and be intuitive about it.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because I think a big part of nature journaling that I try to impart through the work that I do is that it can be a really important part of self-care. And it sounds like by listening to that voice, you said, it's a need, and that answering that need is part of taking care of yourself as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel that it is sort of like a need and a relief and a relaxing just practice. And yeah, I think that's great. That's a perfect way to put it.
Liz, thank you so much for sharing your work and your stories and your beautiful presence with me.
Thank you so much for having me. You are going to have to come to Nashville and see some hummingbirds in the
Absolutely.
future.
I'm going to sit on your back deck and watch birds with you.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Thank you for listening. To discover more about Liz and her beautiful work, visit lizclaytonfuller.com and see the show notes for this episode to find a link to her nature journaling course. See you next week.